Hello, thanks for tuning in. This is our fourth meeting for the Capital Program Facilitation Committee. We're going to be talking about the 2022 program year. My name is David Hutchinson. I'm the Assistant Director for Capital and Asset Management with the Mayor's Office of Management and Budget. So throughout the year, we do quarterly check-ins for the capital program overall. In this meeting, we are going to talk about the 2022 program by the numbers overall, especially look at some of our spending patterns where we can improve. Then I'm going to pass it to some of our high using capital program departments, especially DOMI, Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, and DPW, to talk about some of the highlights, some of the great things they did out in the built environment within the city using 2022 capital funds and some of our older money. And then we're going to close out with just an update on where we're headed for 2023. One thing we really want to keep a sharp eye on is our CDBG program. The Community Development Block Grant funds that we get from HUD are an incredible resource. They're designed to improve the lives of our lowest income city residents, but they also come with strings attached. So one of the big things that we need to be mindful of is what's called timeliness in HUD lingo. So they want to make sure that we're spending money in a way that gets the money out the door, that people can experience the benefits of it, that we're not just sitting on funds. Part of that is a calculation that makes sure that we're not holding more than 1.5 or 150% of our annual allocation in reserves. They want to see that the money's being spent and going out the door. So usually we have a timeliness deadline of January 31st each year. It's based on the program year, and this year we're actually shifting our program year from April, I believe, to October 1st. So the deadline goes backwards 60 days from the start of your program year. So this year for 2023, our timeliness deadline is going to be in the end of July. This was really intentional. It was a great move on the part of Kelly Russell with the community development team to help give our departments more time to spend the money. With a January 31st timeliness deadline, we basically lose an entire construction season. And it's really hard to close out invoices in December and January when the ground's frozen over. So they made a very conscious decision, talked it through for years now, actually, many conversations with our local HUD rep to shift our program year so that it's much easier for departments to get 2 construction seasons in. So the good news for this year is that we have a little bit more time to be able to spend down our balances, but please be mindful that we still have the deadline. It's just shifted back to July this year. So this slide shows both our existing cash balance from earlier this week. We also have to count in our program income. This can be money that the URA gets back as part of loan repayments for community development block grant funded programs. And then that number, the 36 million, is compared to 1.5 times our last year's allocation. So as you can see, the number in yellow, we're about $15.5 million over the limit. But again, the good news is we have until July 31st to spend on those funds and get underneath the cap. Something else we want to keep an eye on is just overall spending with program year that we're in now. We oftentimes will look at, for the program year 2022, how much of that first year spending do we actually get out the door? How much do we spend in prior year funding? How much do we spend overall? These are things that we can track to find larger trends, to see if maybe there's something we can do with the contracting process to speed things up, or maybe procurement's waiting for information from our team that we can pass along faster. So one way we do that is just through this visualization that looks at the overall spending. The blue years are the spending within that program. So this blue bar represents the spending of 2022 funds within 2022. And then we also have prior year funds that we're spending down each year as well. The orange is us spending older funds. For 2018, it's important to note that we had a big spike, but a large chunk of that, 27 million, was just for the purchase of 412 Boulevard, the Allies. There's some internal debates about whether that was a capital project since it wasn't in the capital budget, but for the sake of transparency, I like to report on all the numbers. So as you can see, we have an upward trend going, which is great news. I think we've seen a lot of, especially in the department level, improvements in staffing capacity and the ways in which staff understand how to interact with the budget and spend money. And we've had a lot of conversations with fiscal teams, also trying to be a great support for them when we can. And I think we're moving in the right direction. So hopefully we can keep seeing this kind of aggressive spending that's going to make sure that our residents are seeing those tax dollars impact their lives. One thing in particular we want to keep in mind are bond funds. They're not as restrictive as community development block grant funds, but there still are some strings attached. So the IRS expects that we will be spending 85% of the proceeds from our bond issuances within the 3-year period. So right now, the numbers in yellow are the years that are going to be falling or have already fallen kind of out of that matrix in terms of the 3-year mark. We want to make sure that we're at least meeting our goals in this second column that shows what the 15% threshold would be. So for us, it's important to not only spend CDBG funds, but also to spend our bond funds. Pretty soon, I'm going to pass it over to DPW. You'll hear from Director Hornstein on some of the great capital projects that they've done this year. But I also want to take a moment just to talk about our team. Many things go out, especially to Brendan Katikia and Eric Schultz. They are the ones who are kind of the stewards of this process as the year goes on. The budget, as you all know, is kind of a living document. We make changes to it, the program throughout the year, whether that's shifts in priority, responding to emergencies, responding to bids coming back in different amounts than we anticipated. Brendan and Eric have done a great job in trying to provide support to departments to help them find and recycle and reallocate funds in ways that deliver projects to citizens. We also do a lot of work in terms of reviewing legislation and contracts. They do a lot of that work at an incredible pace. Sometimes we have all been through those kind of legislative crunches, and they always show up and catch all the fine details that I personally would probably miss. So I just want to celebrate their work and thank them for what they've done throughout the program year as well. And with that, I'm going to pass it over. I'm going to stop sharing and pass it over to Chris just to talk about some of the successes this year for the Department of Public Works.
Thanks, Dave. Chris Hornstein, Director of Public Works. So I'm just going to kind of go through our list of where we've had completion. I see, broadly in our system, I saw 2022 as a great staging year. Like, we finalized design on a lot of different elements. So I see 2023 as being a very aggressive on a construction year, but just in terms of projects that we completed across the board. So we have a program to modernize our sports field lighting. And we have completed 3 of those projects substantially. The one project left over, Butthammer Field Lights, we're literally waiting for the field to be dry so the vendor can get on the field and do their installation work. So right now we're targeting like an April 1st completion. And I'll point out that like all those funds were 2022 projects that we identified. So very happy that we can, again, move that money as quickly as possible for our playgrounds and courts. We completed Bud Hammer, Highland Park Super Playground, Deer Pit Playground. We completed design on Chartier Spray Park and Playground. That's under contract for construction, so we're going to see that turned around this year. Upper McKinley Playground. We've had some further community engagement on that, so we're rounding that out. We're expecting that to be complete by mid-June. And Washington's Landing Tennis Courts, there was kind of a grant delay in receiving the funding, so we're going out to bid now for that. We expect that as a 2023 completion. We also completed West Penn Playground, which was a Kaboom grant. So we always also like to be, very responsive to our grant partners and how we execute that work. Park reconstruction is a place where we have a lot of projects, big projects, large projects in design. Right now, Homewood Park, we are finalizing the design with the community on that. We expect to go out to bid this year and get construction underway this year. The same with Enright Park, Arsenal Park, several elements we're going out to bid currently as we kind of get our funding streams in line, but that design has been finalized as well. We've got a couple other projects that are in the kind of design queue, Sheridan Park, Southside Park, which is going to, Southside Park kind of been delayed, but really is, as a complicated environmental issue. So we're working with the DEP to kind of sort out those issues. And, Emerald View, A lot of really great work in design there as well. Some of the other ones that relate to parks themselves, some other odd ones, Highland Park pedestrian tunnel, we completed phases 1 and 2 this year. We're entering phase 3 and 4, so we're going to have an estimated completion of fall 2023 for Highland Park pedestrian tunnel. We partner with PWSA on some projects as well. They're looking to begin Volunteers Field, some stormwater management. They'll help also improve that ball field, so that's a really nice project as well. That's scheduled to happen this year. We also completed installation, working with Parks and Rec. We have installation of some new pool lockers at Highland Park, Moore, and Reed pools. In our public safety inventory, we have finalized installation of all the EMS vehicle exhaust systems. This was a federal grant. So right now they're kind of in their punch list and grant compliance for that project. We finalized our structural assessments for fire stations. So we're activating the most risky work now. Some larger projects there of note, Medic 4, Fire Station 8, Zone 5, both of those projects we are finalizing design and preparing bid packages for those, with the expected to start construction on those elements this year. Oliver Bathhouse, that is currently, and we're going in now into our kind of rec and senior center and our pools. Oliver Bathhouse is in construction. It's in contracting for construction, so we're super excited about that. Moore Pool, a complete renovation of Moore Pool was completed this year. The Olympia Park Shelter, also completed this year. We're in their punch list for that. Going through final invoice and kind of accepting the work. We also completed HVAC replacements for McKinley Rec Center and exterior renovations at Sheridan Senior Center. Not technically a capital project, but I'll note that the West End Senior Center, we finalized that purchase. That recently happened to close out the last year. So happy to finally kind of have that on the city book. The other one of note, the Mellon Tennis Dome, we are kind of, for lack of a better term, we're in our punch list. We have the flooring installed, so there's just some final permitting issues that we're going through. So that's been completed as well. Other buildings of note, the 412, that is under contract. So we finalized design in 2022. That is under contract. We are beginning construction this month. So that's super exciting. A long time coming. I know everybody is waiting for that. We're also waiting on the 4th Division construction. So we're in the process of finalizing construction documents and preparing that bid package. We expect that to get under construction, out to bid and under construction as soon as possible. Other ones of note that impact all city staff. We are revisiting our city county building restrooms project. We are going back to our architects to kind of validate some design requirements, and we're looking to go out to bid for phase 1, which is kind of work in the basement, as well as a first floor public restroom. We're looking to go out to bid that this year for that. Another project that has received prior year funding that's very sensitive, the Sawmill Run salt facility. So our design there is finalized. We're actually preparing our bid package. We're going to go out to bid this year, but construction will not commence until April of 2024. It's a little bit unusual that we have that kind of delay, but just due to the sensitivity of the structure and the absolute need to make sure it's available during the winter seasons, and then concerns over the long lead time, we're going to go out to bid early with a much later starting construction date, and that's done with intentionality. Sorry, that's done intentionally, so that we can avoid risk, any risk associated with not having the structure available during the winter season. And that is my list, Dave.
Yeah, what a mix of projects. We talked about it last year, but I think one of the silver linings of the pandemic is the renewed interest in outdoor space. And the way in which projects like the field lighting can actually make the pie bigger and give people more opportunities is really exciting, but also you're tasked with not only those kind of resident facing projects, but a lot of work for the roughly 3,000 city employees and where their offices are, whether it's in a police station or in a DPW division. A lot of those facilities have not seen some good work in a number of years when we were going through Act 47. So it's great to be able to see those spaces for our fellow staff refreshed and made better for their daily work. Thank you for your work on that. So up next, we're going to hear from Director Lucas with the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure.
So thank you, everybody. My name is Kim Lucas. I'm the director for the City of Pittsburgh's Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. If you're not familiar with our department, one of the newest city departments, about 5.5 years old. And our mission is to provide the physical infrastructure and mobility so that residents of Pittsburgh and visitors can achieve the economic and social mobility that they deserve. So as you can see here, DOMI has the 4th largest budget overall. We've had the largest capital budget allocation, I believe, in 2022. I'm not totally sure if that's the case for 23. It might be, but you can see in proportion to our operating budget, we're a little skewed there compared to the amount of dollars that we're responsible for managing and the number of people that we have available to manage them. It's a little off balance, but despite that, we have really knocked it out of the park. So as a quick note, there was a performance audit this year, and we have been able to address those findings. And for ones that we have not yet addressed, we continue to work on those. This is just a brief overview of our org chart. We have 3 bureaus, one overseeing planning, policy, and permitting, one that oversees traffic programming and projects and operations, and then the third, which is the project design and delivery, who manage the overwhelming majority of the capital dollars within the department. We're responsible for maintaining the streets. There's 1,000 miles of roadway in the city, over 40,000 streetlights, over 600 signalized intersections, and more assets. And those are all within the responsibility of the department. Maintenance structures and bike infrastructure. So as you can see here, we own as a city nearly 150 bridges. The city overall has nearly 450 bridges, but 150 of those are the responsibility of the city and specifically DOMI to maintain. There are over 800 sets of public steps citywide. We have hundreds and hundreds of retaining walls and miles of guide rails. There's additional infrastructure like bus shelters, pavement markings, and more that this department is managing. So here for 2022 accomplishments in terms of maintenance, you can see that we were able to resurface over 43 miles of street. That is the greatest chunk of our capital budget is for street resurfacing. We were able to repair 11 concrete, brick, and blockstone streets. We painted hundreds of miles of center line and crosswalks and repaired thousands of signs. This is a map that shows that our work is citywide. As you can see here, and Karen, I saw your note, I can make this presentation available after today. We have landslides that we're remediating. We've got bridge projects such as the West Ohio Street Bridge, which was completed this year, the 2-way conversion of Allegheny Circle, flood control projects for Sawmill Run, and sidewalk projects like Irvine Street, where we completed a large portion of brand new sidewalk. In terms of bridge asset management, we all know that on January 28th of 2022, the Fern Hollow Bridge collapsed. That sort of reinforced the need to have very strong asset management practices within the department. And this year, we're pleased to announce that we're kicking off design of 9 bridge projects. So in addition to increasing our abilities in-house to do things like bridge maintenance, washing, painting, cleaning, we also are leveraging millions of federal funds in addition to city funds to do substantial rehabilitation and in some cases brand new bridge replacements for 9 bridges in 2023. In 2022, in terms of traffic signals, you can see here that we implemented or improved a number of new signals. The city has, and specifically DOMI has, about $25 million in smart spines, which is federal funding to implement smart traffic signal corridors. And that will enable us to be able to dynamically change things like signal timing. This will help with emergency responses and will also make sure that we can update our signals in an efficient manner from our traffic management center without having to go physically out to the field to update things like signal timing. And traffic calming. So the city implemented its traffic calming program in 2019, and arguably it's one of the most successful and popular programs that our department offers. I believe to date, we are up to nearly 1,000 requests for individual streets for traffic calming. And we were able to do a number of projects, as you can see here, citywide. For the public, we this year made available, and I think I have a slide on it later, a map portal where 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, any member of the public can access the DOMI map portal. And on that website, you can see all of the traffic calming requests that we've received. Not only can you see what streets have been requested, but you can also see a status for those streets. So we are able to tell you on that map if the street has been evaluated yet, if the data collected meets the criteria for a traffic calming project, and whether or not a project has yet been programmed. Here are additional examples of speed humps and improved pedestrian infrastructure that we were able to install. We were able to improve pedestrian crossings at more than 40 intersections this year, and we processed nearly 500 traffic calming applications. In addition to traffic calming, we also were able to improve safety on our streets through our Complete Streets program. As you can see here, in 2022, we were able to complete 10 miles of new or improved bike connections citywide. So some of these miles are dedicated bike facilities like bike lanes, but a lot of the miles are what we call our neighbor way, which are simply streets that have been improved and traffic has been calmed on so that it's safe for all users of that roadway. Here are just some examples of that infrastructure that we were able to install this year, including brand new types of infrastructure. Our protected intersection, as you can see here, is part of our Allegheny Circle two-way conversion, a contraflow bike lane, which means it's a bike lane that allows you to ride opposite the direction of car traffic, though we did have one, I believe, downtown earlier than this year, and an advisory bike lane, which is a tool used to increase bike access when you don't have enough physical footprint for a completely dedicated facility. And in public space and right-of-way management. So not one that affects our capital budget, but our department is also responsible for all of the right-of-way permitting and inspections, which means that we coordinate with utilities and any entity that wants to do work in our right-of-way. And as you can see here, we issued over 9,000 permits this year and performed over 20,000 inspections. So the city is also responsible, or DOMI specifically is responsible for managing our bus shelter advertising contract. This year, we were able to install 3 new shelters, replace 6 shelters with new equipment, and processed 2,500 maintenance requests, and managed the deposit of nearly $200,000 in shelter advertising revenue. And streetlights. So the city has over 40,000 streetlights that DOMI maintains. This past year, we had to recompete the request for proposals to convert those streetlights to LED. And this year, right now, we are working on awarding that contract for the design and planning of that conversion project, which will include the identification of new locations for new streetlights so that we can make sure that we're building out the light equity plan that the city has developed. And mobility programs, again, not a capital expense, but something that our department has successfully overseen, which is our Move PGH program, bringing mobility services into one app and into shared physical locations called mobility hubs, and the expansion of the outdoor retail and dining program, including the publishing of guides for businesses so that they know exactly what's allowed in our right-of-way and how to go through the process of converting what is existing curbside space into outdoor dining. These are examples of a plan that we completed in 2022. The Homewood Mobility Plan is an active transportation plan that leveraged not only city dollars, but also county and federal dollars, and includes the first complete sidewalk inventory of any community in the city of Pittsburgh. So the Homewood plan has a complete inventory of sidewalks and curb ramps, which is a model that we hope to see and replicate in other communities. And our Safe Routes to School program, which uses Pennsylvania Department of Transportation funding and federal funding to improve access to biking and walking to our city schools. And again, this is an overview of that map portal that I referenced earlier. You can go online and, particularly relevant to today's meeting, You can find out, for example, on our paving history map, where the department has paved over the last 5 years. We've vastly increased transparency around the work of DOMI. And so you can go and you can see where we've paved for the last 5 years. You can see where we have traffic calming requests and the status of those requests. You can see our project update map, the goal being to ultimately have any project that's listed in the capital budget to have a place for it to live online for people to be able to get status updates, again, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And for those that are active projects that we're actively seeking feedback on, please check out the Engage PGH page. And finally, emergency responses. So a lot of the work that you can see, including on that project map, are planned work. They're either brand new projects that we've identified the need through, asset management work or through planning studies. But a lot of what takes up not only dollars, resources, but also our time is the response to emergencies, and specifically landslides and sinkholes. And this year we had 2 bridge emergencies, including one, the Finland Street pedestrian bridge that had to be demolished within 24 hours of a motor vehicle striking it. And so when you look at the department's budget, know that a lot of it is going towards not planned work, but emergency responses. Landslides and flooding cleanups. This is a big part of what we do. Often in one year, our dollars go towards stabilization and cleanup of an emergent issue like a landslide. But for many, for example, Andover Terrace, that's not the end of that project. It's just the beginning. And having to program major multi-million-dollar projects in future years is what has come out of a number of these projects. And with that, I think we can end here, Dave. This is just talking about the vision for 23 for the department, which is, of course, to do even more of that great work that we've had. In 22, I believe we spent $50 million. And so continuing with that trend with our project delivery and continuing to improve the resources that are available to the public about that project delivery through our website, our map portal, and better engagement and outreach is a major goal for our department.
Yeah, congratulations on your new portal. When we work on capital budgets, we struggle with even explaining what we've already accomplished to help people understand how much work we do. So to be able to do even the kind of project visioning work that you're showing online, I think gives people a lot of assurance that they're being heard. There's a lot of priorities in the city, a lot of needs. So to show that process in such a transparent way, I think is really powerful. With that, I want to give some space for Director Vargas from the Department of Parks and Rec. They are not necessarily the project managers for capital projects, but they rely heavily on capital assets. They work really closely, especially with the Department of Public Works, to make sure that our spaces are great for seniors and young people as well. A lot of great recreational assets. So Director Vargas, do you want to talk about some of your highlights from 2022?
Sure, definitely. And I don't have a formal presentation, but I did want to share my screen for just some images. So yeah, we don't have any capital money that we directly program, but DPW and the projects that they do directly impact the work that we do in our department. We run all of the recreation facilities and recreation assets. So pools, spray parks, rec centers, and we also run our senior programs. So a couple of the things that Director Hornstein mentioned that are really important to us. Of course, the Mellon Tennis Dome. You can see here what the new dome is looking like. It actually has gotten a little further along since these photos. We're looking at it being open in the next month or so. And this has been a major program for us. We program the Mellon Tennis Bubble. We run a number of clinics. So if you have not had a chance to be part of the Bubbles work, come by once it's reopened. If you're interested in getting into tennis, we do everything from youth programming to beginner programs to people who are advanced and intermediate. And we also have been seeing a number of pickleball projects that have been completed by DPW, which have also been unbelievably important. As if you haven't heard yet, pickleball is taking Pittsburgh and other cities by storm. And I really appreciate the work that DPW has done in getting pickleball access to others. This is 2 new courts that were put into Bud Hammer, just completed recently. I also want to share some photos of the Moore Pool completion. So Moore Pool was a huge project for us. It impacts our aquatics operations directly. And one of the largest overhauls of the pool, of a pool, it's the newest pool you can see here. This is from the grand opening. We had a really successful season out at Moore Pool, and there's a number of additional pool projects that DPW is working on. I know the Homewood renovation, Homewood Park, that involves renovation of the pool. And it really is an important asset that brings the community together. We not only have patrons come and use the pool, of course, every day, but we also hosted our summer camps float your boat competition, where every camp made their own life-size boat, and a camp counselor was chosen to see whose boat stayed afloat. And it was really fun, but we do use it to activate our programs too, and make sure that young people have access to pools and are learning to swim. It's a really important asset in every community. So I wanted to share that. And also playgrounds were referenced. It's really great about the playgrounds that, DPW completed this year. The West Penn Kaboom build, which is right there on the, hopefully your left, that's right next to our West Penn Rec Center. So we think about the different facilities that are being worked on and maintained by the DPW team. When we activate a center like West Penn, having these close proximity facilities also in great shape and renovated are really important to how people go and then use that area as a campus where there's activities and opportunities for patrons and kids to play. And same with the Highland Park Super Playground. I wanted to mention that, that's in a RAD park, and we work really closely with the Department of Public Works as it relates to programming in RAD parks, and also how that connects to the Capitol and that happens in RAD parks. So an example would be, we are working with a partner on activating this playground for story times in this next summer season. And that's a way that, we think about programming assets when we have an opportunity. But it came out awesome. And I think the DPW team, Andrea and her team, did a really fantastic job on this. It involved a lot of input, and the outcome was fantastic. So I wanted everyone to see that. And I would be, I also just wanted to note, while not capital, CDBG does support our senior programs holistically. And so I wanted to give Luann Horan an opportunity to speak to senior programs. She is our Assistant Director for Healthy Active Living.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Our senior programs are very valuable to our community. We have 13 senior centers across the city, and part of our funds come from, believe it or not, community development block grants. And that money goes to provide for our salaries for our employees that operate our senior centers. And at our senior centers, we have a center director, a recreation leader 1, and some part-time staff that oversee our centers. In conjunction with the CDBG funds, we also get funds from the Allegheny County area Department of Aging area. And so between the two, we get about $1.6 million to operate our senior centers each year. And our staff do a wonderful, amazing job, as you can see from the pictures. They are healthy, active living centers, as we call them. And everybody enjoys themselves tremendously. We do a lot of fun things, and if anybody's interested in coming to join our centers, we are always looking for participants to be a part of our centers. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, and just one last thing I wanted to mention, some of the additional work that DPW has been helping with us have been things like pool lockers. We've also been upgrading fitness equipment across rec centers, and those improvements are also, equally important to the user experience that patrons have at any of our centers. So when you think capital, definitely think buildings, but also think all the fun that happens afterwards. And if you haven't had a chance to stop by any of our facilities, opportunities, I encourage everybody to see what assets are in their backyard and start exploring and come and say hi to one of our staff. Thanks, thanks Dave, for the time.
Yeah, thank you for sharing so much information. Yeah, we do capital meetings throughout the summer, especially, and some of the best meetings we've had have been in rec and senior centers. I think people feel really comfortable in those spaces, in large part due to the staff who are there every day building relationships with the community. I also think 2022 was the year of pickleball. I think there might be enough interest for a City of Pittsburgh employees tournament if there's not one already in the works. So next I do want to pass to Director Karen Abrams from the Department of City Planning. They're revamping the comp plan in some really exciting ways that's going to impact the way in which we do capital for the next few years. So Director Abrams.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you everybody for presenting. And this is like my first year in, and I'm just really grateful that these meetings happen. And I will probably share much of what I've heard with the directors in city planning, because we are actually embarking on our comprehensive planning process. Today was our first strategy meeting. We have one tomorrow, and then one for zoning code overhaul, like in probably the next couple of weeks. But I did want to mention that I would like to, and I know I've spoken with Director Hornstein and Director Lucas, obviously, about comp planning, but just wanted to just again reiterate that we would love to work with you and your planning teams, you know, collaboratively, right, around facilities specifically for Chris, and obviously just everything infrastructure and mobility related. We really wanted to figure out how to put these chapters together, and your and your staff's like participation and collaboration with us to help us figure out how to best do that would be really impactful and grateful. And also, as we're trying to plan around this, we want to make sure that we have space and room for implementation of some of the bigger things that we come up with over the next 2 or 3 years. So wanting to make sure that, and of course, including Director Vargas in that as well, because obviously the community engagement and programming pieces of this will be hugely impactful and important to the work that we put into this plan for your rec centers and your senior centers as well. So I just wanted to mention that, and this is obviously a long-term conversation, but wanted to bring that to this group as, you know, as obviously looking at operating funds, for capital funds for the coming years. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, I'm really excited. One of the, for residents' knowledge as well, one of the scoring categories when we're scoring and trying to make recommendations for the mayor's budget includes adherence or compliance with an adopted plan. So having comprehensive plans, having neighborhood plans, having park level master plans really informs our work and helps us figure out how to choose between some really tough priorities sometimes. So I'm excited to see all the progress you all are making. Today we are going to close out with just one more slide, just to look forward a little bit for the 2023 program year. Of course, really important pieces of data include when your money is going to be available, right? So for PAYGO, we're usually able to do that transfer once a lot of our property tax receipts are in. That's usually early, mid, late February, somewhere in there. For bond, we're planning to go out in, I think, late March, so the funds will be available earlier in April. CDBG, we may see a shift this year. Traditionally, HUD releases funds to entitlement communities in the order in which their program years go. So the bad news is with moving our program year back, we might be later in that line. The good news is that you may have noticed over the last, 6 or 7 years that I've been here, they've been getting more and more aggressive with the timeline for distribution of funds. So it's been happening earlier and earlier in the year. So we may still be in really good shape to have it in early fall. Fingers crossed on that one. I know we have a lot of projects and needs with CD funds. So hopefully we get those sooner than we anticipate. And then new for last year was the parks tax. We're going to start doing some of those transfers. We've actually done a few for the 2022 funds. We're going to be doing a lot of the 2023 fund transfers, hopefully in the first quarter. With that, we also want to just remind you that we do the controller's close every year. That's where we're looking for funds that are 3 years old or older that have been unspent or have been dormant for 3 years. We try to recycle them towards new needs. I know all the department directors, the council offices on here have your own lists of things you'd like to do. So we try to make sure that the projects that have been closed out with some leftover balances, that those extra funds can get moved to something more urgent. And then this year, we're gonna also kind of renew our interest in the CDBG funds. There's an 8-year limit on those, but we wanna speed that up a little bit to make sure we're not only meeting timeliness, but also just serving residents better, that we're getting the funds out there into their communities so they can experience the benefit. With that, I'm going to close out unless anybody has any other comments or questions at this time. I just want to say thanks to everybody for your work throughout the year. The success of this program is built on decisions you all are making every day, sometimes really difficult decisions. So I appreciate the thoughtfulness that you all put into your work.